So first of all, hello to everyone and welcome. My name is Margarida Teixeira and I'm the Communication and Media Manager for StreetNet. We are very happy that you can be here with us today. I'll start just by reminding everyone of some technical issues. So we have interpretation in English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Hindi in this webinar. So make sure to choose your language channel because our guests will really be speaking in all of these different languages. You need to have language channel chosen to listen to interpretation. Also, as usual, we kindly remind everyone to mute their microphones during the webinar so we don't have any sound disruption during our speakers' interventions. On behalf of the media team of StreetNet International, the global alliance of street vendors and other informal traders associations, I just want to say how we are very excited to be organizing this event. As you know, on October 7th, organizations of workers from around the globe celebrate the World Day for Decent Work. But we know that for informal economy workers, decent work is still very far from them. They're still very far from enjoying decent working conditions. Life as a street vendor can be very difficult, and there is a lot of stigma attached to this work, even though our members are working every day to better this reality. We also know that media, communication, and reporting have a very important role to play to promote decent work and to denounce labor rights violations. And so that is why we wanted to bring together worker leaders, human rights defenders, and researchers, as well as communication and media professionals to exchange experiences and ideas. Today, we are very happy that we have with us our StreetNet leadership and also guests from ILO ACTRAV, Human Rights Watch, Equal Times, and the Asian Labor Review. Last year, we organized a similar event with journalists, workers, and communication professionals from our affiliated organizations about how journalists could accurately portray the stories of street vendors. That recording is available in our YouTube channel, as will be the recording of this conversation today. We are sure that this webinar will be just as fruitful and insightful, and I'd like to remind you all that StreetNet is always available to have this kind of engagements and discussions. So now, without any further delay, I will pass the mic to our international coordinator, Oksana Abboud, for some welcome words. Oksana, if you are there, please go ahead.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, bonjour, buenos dias. So my name is Oksana Abboud. I am StreetNet International Coordinator, and I am very happy to be here at this very special webinar for all of us, because this is a webinar which we also, as Margarita highlighted, we dedicate to the Decent Work for Decent Life Day, which is marked annually on the 7th of October. So this is a very special event for all of us when we also invited media, experts, journalists, as well as our workers' leaders to this one special webinar, as we all are trying to promote the rights and interests of the workers engaged in informal economy. And in particular for StreetNet, this is street and market vendors around the world, and where currently we are represented in 52 countries in 4 continents. I believe it is also important to remember that according to the ILO statistics, 61% of the global workforce is engaged in informal economy. And this is just the number before the COVID pandemic. So we can just imagine what the number is now, and the tendency shows that the informality is growing, and not only in developing countries, but also in developed countries. So we all started to experience this new reality, but what does this new reality mean for all the workers, for all of us? How we can extend and strengthen the voices of informal economy workers, and somehow also to cooperate together with trade unions and other like-minded organizations, but also very important with media outlets, journalists, and any other possible ally who can help us shift the mindset of society, who can promote the rights and livelihoods for the most vulnerable category of workers, As we all know, that media is a very influential and powerful tool if we use it strategically and translate this new reality into actions and impact through media. I also would like to remind all of us about the conclusions of the ILO conference in 2002 during the labor conference of the ILO, where representatives of governments, workers, and employers organizations, they adopted a resolution which incorporate conclusions on decent work and the informal economy. So these 4 components of decent work, which are opportunities for employment and income, respect for rights at work, social protection, and stronger social dialogue, forms the so-called backbone of the ILO's approach towards the informal economy. But also, which is very important, in 2005, the ILO, during its annual ILO conference, adopted the recommendation 204 on transition from the informal to formal economy. So despite the fact that there is no national legislation on informal economy workers or their regulations, we still have these existing international instruments to promote and use in our countries. But we have to refer to the informal economy workers as essential workers who really enormously contribute to the local and national economy. But at the same time, they are still unprotected legally. They lack social protection, but also the recognition. I again would like to thank you all for your presence here, for your time, because this is very important for us to have such important speakers, but also our workers' leaders. I believe we will have very successful, productive discussion. And I would like to encourage all of our participants who joined us today also to engage, to ask your question, and feel free to express your opinion. Wish you all success. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Oksana. So now we would actually like to play you a message from our president, Lorraine Sibanda, who unfortunately could not be here with us today, but she actually sent her intervention in audio form. So let me just share her message. Let me know if you can hear it well.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining our StreetNet webinar, which will discuss the importance of decent work to street vendors. My name is Lorraine Sibanda. I am from Zimbabwe. I am the president of StreetNet International, as well as president of the Zimbabwe Chamber of Informal Economy Associations. In my role with both organizations, I have come across so many challenges faced by street vendors at both organizational level and at personal level. These challenges have mostly to do with the way that our work is viewed and the way that our work is respected or not respected by both the formal setups and the public in general. Our workplace is mostly in the public space. And what we need is that our work should be recognized as work, and we ourselves as legitimate workers. In most countries, there is no option but for people to work as street vendors due to lack of employment opportunities, even for those that are educated. So as a result of this scenario, there has been a boom in the informal economy activities, which include street vending. And StreetNet has got a majority of members who work as street vendors. The solution, or part of the solution to the problems that street vendors face as we work, would be to begin to consciously ingrain aspects of decent work into the work we do. And that cannot be done in the absence or non-involvement of the different governments in the countries that we work in. Why involve governments? Because real recognition and respect stem from policies which recognize street vendors or informal traders as workers. If we have national policies, local policies which recognize us as workers, this is a beginning to say we are at the beginning of being recognized, of being respected, then we continue to advocate for more. And when I say we advocate for more, what are we advocating for? We continue to negotiate and engage to say, seeing that in most countries now, informal economy workers are the majority. We need to work towards decent work for all, not only for workers in the formal employment, but for workers in the informal employment as well. This means that we need to see workers' rights within the informal economy, which involves street vendors. We also need to see social protection availed to all. We also need to see employment creation. And we need to see social dialogue within the informal economy. These aspects will help to ensure that decent work is availed to workers in the informal economy. Decent work means that there will be these four aspects, and there are some aspects because social protection has got so many aspects which go with it. When we speak about social protection, we are looking at such issues as access to pension, access to proper maternity health care, access to child health care, and we also look at such things as access to social benefits, which may mean that some countries do have an unemployment fund, while some don't have it. But still, these speak to different aspects of social protection, and this should be availed also to the informal economy. How can we then talk about these issues such that we paint a picture that is attractive to the rest of the world, attractive to the rest of the sectors, to give our lived realities a positive image? As street vendors, especially during the times of COVID, we have seen that we are an essential part of any community. We provided essential services, we brought services closer to the people, and also we helped in looking after community members, family members who were ill. We provided solutions using whatever resources we had in creating sanitizers, in creating masks from any material that we had at hand. This is just to give an example to say media can assist by putting or packaging our issues in a positive manner to bring out the positivity of street vending. Because in most countries and in most national policies, street vendors are regarded as a public nuisance. They are the ones who make the cities dirty, and there are so many laws and regulations which are set out to beautify the cities and get rid of street vendors. Yet there are also so many solutions from a street vendor's perspective, which can lead to beautification of cities, whilst there is that cohabiting between the street vendors and the rest of the community and the rest of the street or community and city infrastructure. For instance, if proper workplaces are given to street vendors with clean, safe, and potable water, and also that engagement between street vendors and local authorities and other stakeholders to make sure that there is that constant working together towards building the cities, I believe that as street vendors, we are a very positive agent for national development in any country. We have seen it through the work that we do with the various organizations of StreetNet, which are affiliated to StreetNet. We see how they've impacted their countries positively, how they've impacted their communities positively. Some have actually come up with their own childcare facility initiatives. And we continue to have trainings on how we can negotiate with our local authorities for better services, how we can also contribute to the growth of our different communities. So this dialogue, I'm not going to talk about it too much, because at the end of the day, there are speakers within the panel. And if I have a very long speech, I may be preempting part of their presentations. So in short, I will say, as street vendors, we have the solutions. We know our lived realities, and we know what we would like to see. And what we would like to see is not too different from the idea that governments or local authorities have of beautiful cities. The only difference is that where some seek to eliminate street vendors as an eyesore, we see ourselves as an aesthetic part of any city. And if given a positive and conducive environment, we can actually contribute massively to such issues or initiatives as tourism, attraction, as well as national development. With those not so few words, I would like to thank you and also welcome you to this very important webinar. I give special thanks to the members of the media who are here today, and also the Human Rights Watch, because our issues are human rights issues. Because firstly, before we are workers, we are human. And any initiative to deal with street vendors should have a human rights-based approach. No local authority should abuse, harass, and violate street vendors. We need to see the implementation, the ratification first, then implementation of the Convention 190, which speaks to the elimination of violence and harassment in the world of work. My gratitude also goes to the representative of the ILO XREF, as well as the StreetNet International Leadership membership and the StreetNet team led by the international coordinator, Ms. Oksana Abboud. Thank you all very much for this important webinar and for making it possible, and especially the media team who always come out blazing when it comes to magnifying and amplifying our issues. Have a lovely engagement on this webinar.
Thank you, Oksana. Thank you, Margarida. And thanks also to our President, Lorraine Sibanda, who took the time, despite not being able to join us, to greet us via audio message. My name is Irene, and I work for the media office at StreetNet, and I will be moderating the panel today. So first of all, I would like to thank you all once again, all the speakers who are here today. I just have a quick reminder for all of you. Please try to stick to 10 minutes of the length of your intervention so that we have time also to go, like, to give space to every person that has to speak, and also maybe at the end have a Q&A session that is always important in these cases. So without further ado and without using more time, I would like to introduce you to the first speaker. The first person we are going to hear from is Maya Gurung. So Maya is the president of NEST, the Nepali Trade Union of Street Vendors, who is an affiliate of StreetNet in Nepal, and is also a member of the International Council of StreetNet. She's from Kathmandu, where street vendors have been evicted and persecuted by municipal authorities recently. NEST has been on the front line of the struggle for decent working conditions. Sister Maya, so the question I have for you is if you can share a bit of your experience and how you have tried to raise awareness of the issue as NEST with the media. And we know that you have had both positive and negative experience. And if you can also update us on how the negotiation with the authorities are going. So the floor is yours. And again, if you can please stick to 10 minutes of length. Thank you.
धन्यवाद सिस्टर
Thank you sister Irene. My name is Maya Gurung. I'm the chairperson of NEST. I'm also the StreetNet member council of the President Lorraine, Vice President Alberto, Margarita, Sister Margarita, and I like to welcome and greet everyone who are present here on behalf of the NEST and myself. I like to thank the SNI media team and everyone for organizing this program. And I would like to wish all the best for the successful completion of this program. As regards the agenda of the program, from how the media can promote the decent work for street vendors. The media word is a very important term for us. It's important for us to understand that. So we need to change ourselves as well as the society. The age is the age of the science, and media is the important part of the science technology. In the technology means in the newspaper, radio, TV, and also the social media like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. And in the present context, YouTube and other video social media are also important channels. The media plays a role in creating a important space for the important space for the media for the society, and we also consider it as the fourth state of the fourth organ of the state, and it also works as a bridge between the various segments of society, and because we have felt that, and it's also important for the media to be fair, and because it disseminates the information that it collects through its channels to hundreds of thousands of its users. We can get information through it. You can get the information through it of the society and villages and our countries and throughout the world. We can get the information from we can use the mobile smartphone that we have at our hand and get information from throughout the world, and also we can like communicate with anyone throughout the world. We can directly communicate with anyone in the world, and we can talk to them, and we can also disseminate our information to the world. And we are also share the experiences and work of our organization with one another. And so this is what I've experienced. The Next Nepal, the organization is a representative organization for the street vendors. It has been like 22 years that we have established the organization. We have struggled a lot. We have done the mass mobilizations to raise our voices and to and we had the role of the media was very important in raising this voice, and the media used to take interest in the activity that we organized in the past, and that we are organizing now, and that will organize in the future. All the activities that we do every day, we organize through, we share that to the media, and also to our organizations. We have Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, TikTok. We disseminate the information through those channels as well. So this is also part of the media. We share our issues through Zoom meetings and other web-based connecting channels. We also use media, organize press meets, give interviews to put our voices across to the concerned authorities, the government, the various levels of government. Any social work like the cleaning or street cleaning or blood donation programs, we also share that to the media, and the media disseminates that information. We try to disseminate the activities on the front line through the media and through our channels, so that it reaches to the hundreds of thousands of our members and other well-wishers and the street vendors. The street vendors, for the management of the street vendors, we had we formed a committee to resolve the issues of the media, but because of various change in various governments, we could not like resolve it. We could not resolve the issue for the street vendors. And recently, one of our friends stood 199 hours in front of the Kathmandu Metropolitan Office to raise the voices of the street vendors, and the various political leaders and other civil society leaders and the general public raised the voices on our behalf, and ultimately the mayor of the Kathmandu Metropolitan City, Balendra Shah, was forced to come to the negotiating table, and we decided to form a committee with the representatives from the Nepal government, Kathmandu Metropolitan City, and the traffic police, and the representatives from our organizations, so that we could that the issues could be addressed. And the one of the agreements was to return the items that were seized from the street vendors. And this was also this was also through the contribution of the media. And it's not that always that the media supports our position. And in some media channels also use misinformation and disinformation. There is one example that we have back one year back, when the Kathmandu Metropolitan City had a new mayor, the Balendra Shah. When he came, he displaced the street vendors from throughout the metropolitan city, and he enforced a policy of seizing the items and displacing the street vendors. We assembled 7,000 to 8,000 street vendors and did a mass mobilization. And we also had a sit-in program in front of the municipality. We also formed a delegation team, and we also tried to meet him. But the mayor was not interested in that, in the dialogue. And there were like hundreds of media present there in front of the office, metropolitan office. We were very surprised because earlier only 5-10 media used to come, but this time there were like hundreds of media. We thought that that's very good news because our demands will be met. But the reality was that only two to four medias disseminate information or news in our favor, and the other medias, especially the YouTubers, they distorted our issues and try to try to make the local people against our issues, or rise against our issues. And those YouTubers and other medias were in favor of a mayor and his policies, and they raised their voices in favor of mayor and his policies and against the interest of the street vendors. And they made the clips and the issue viral in the YouTube and TikTok. They distorted or give that issues and give our issues in negative light, and the comments on those media were against our issue. So not all the medias are in our support, and we need to be aware about that. And we cannot work without the media, and we need to be aligned with the media. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maya, and thank you for sharing your experience of what happened in Kathmandu and also the mobilization that you were able to engage with Nest, and especially the double role of media, the positive experience that you have, but also the experience with disinformation. So I remind you all that Nest has very active social media channels. So if you wish to have more information about their daily engagements and their daily struggle, you can follow them on Facebook and all of the channels that Sister Maya mentioned. So thank you very much, Sister Maya, for this intervention. And I remind you that at the end of the panel, we will probably have a session for questions. So if you have any question for Maya, you can reserve it for the end of the panel, or you can type it in the chat. I will now give the floor to Marta Checa, who is the second speaker and also the co-editor of Equal Times. Equal Times, as many of you know, is a trilingual English, French, and Spanish global news and opinion website who is focusing on labor, human rights, and other topics, all from a social justice perspective. So Marta, welcome, and thank you very much for joining us today. So the question that I have for you is, what would you recommend to workers' organizations who are trying to attract the attention of media outlets, especially to denounce labor violations or authority violence, and therefore defend their need for decent work? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Rene. Thank you very much, actually, for inviting me. And I stress the thank you because nowadays, media, people who work in the media, we really have very little time to really stop by and listen for a long time to people and, you know, find stories, and we actually stop and think. So this is actually a very interesting conference, I mean, for me, you know, to grab ideas from the opponents. And I already got one from the president of StreetNet. Perhaps I'll share with you later. So the question, Irene, that you ask, okay, is not an easy thing, but let's try to see if, I mean, if I give you the example of how we work at Equal Times, perhaps, I don't know if this is of interest for your members and actually for many other NGOs. So we are in media and we have a process. So the story is, how and why do we publish a story? What is the decision making? So basically, in our case, and in many other news desks, what happens is that, well, in our case, we have a network of journalists all over the world. And this network of freelance journalists, they come to us with ideas. They pitch us some ideas. Or we have some idea and we have people on the ground and we actually check with them, can you do this for us? So basically, when we have an idea or when the idea comes to us, it's like we just check it and we see, okay, what else? I mean, if we end up doing a story, what are we adding to the conversation? Is this interesting, for instance, for the debate? For instance, when there is the Uber drivers in California and there is a new legislation that is going to pass, if we publish something at that moment, it's like because we want to explore this thing for the public opinion to think on this specific point on decent work, because we don't see that in the media, for instance. So these are the 2 points that we actually take into consideration. What are we adding to the conversation? Is this important for the debate in this specific points? Decent work on care economy, informal economy. So Are we adding something here? And is this going to be interesting for the debate? And of course, we think on our readers. Is something that has been covered all the time? So if this is the case, why would we add, another story on the same with the same ingredients? If has been covered a lot, but we find a new angle, then there are possibilities. And also, of course, we are, in our case, we always look for the human interest of the stories. We have to take in account, in our case, countries, a balance between countries and regions and topics. So we don't publish more than 300 stories per year. So in our case, we cannot publish 20 times on one specific topic, no? So we have to really take care of these points. Of course, when we are going to, at the beginning of the year, we normally see what are the international days or days with, that we can actually put some information, like the International Day for Eradication of Poverty, which is today. So we actually did something specific for today on that specific topic. You were mentioning, Irene, and other panelists before that, the World Day for Decent Work. This is very important for you, and it's also for us. So we will try to find the stories. And if it happens that we have received a press release from your organization or many others on that specific thing, and we have the need to cover that, I mean, we have the people on the ground, and we see that we can, we can actually do a nice story, then it's a win-win. We need to cover something for that specific day, and you actually have something to say. So in that case, well, voila, the story can be, can start to be produced. So it's also for us, of course, important to have someone on the ground, because I mean, if we don't, I mean, we are the kind of media that, we do the stories with real people, and checking on people. So it's serious stuff that we are doing. So normally we will need to have someone on the ground. If not, then we may need to change to another country where we do have some people who could cover that. So for us, this is important, and it's not also for us, but also for many news desks. Of course, I mean, how do you pitch a media? So in general, more or less, we all work like this. So if it is important to know the media that you are going to tap, so I suppose it's a waste of time if you just go to every single media. So normally there are media that are more open to some specific topics or some specific stories. So the more you know a media, the more you know that your story can go there, because you know the kind of stories that they publish. So it's actually interesting to know the media, and if possible, to know the name of the journalist or the editor covering those specific topics. There are several media focused on labor. Equal Times is actually one of those. And also there are many, other media that work on very different topics, but they also have specific sections where they will publish the kind of stories that your organization could actually produce. So again, knowing the media and knowing the people who do those articles is good, because nowadays there are very few journalists who are actually specialized in labor issues. So important thing is, when you go to a media, you have to explain things very clear and very briefly, because I mean, when we receive like a ton of mails, like I suppose like everyone around the world. In our case, X exponential, and when they put attachment, when you don't understand what they are trying to, it's like the information it has to be very simple. It's like when you are telling something to your neighbor and it's an old person or it's a very young person who knows nothing. So you don't go with jargon, and you just go to the, straight to the point. So if something is suffering about something, or there is a new legislation that is going to help the you know, I suppose, I mean, of course, police harassment or eviction, or I don't know, the kind of topics that, you know, are frequent for street vendors. So you have to pass the message very simply, straight to the point, no attachments. And of course, I explain who are you and your your credentials. No, I mean, how are you how are you connected to the story, and why are you a source? And if, of course, you have contacts that you could pass to the media, so you know there is always this kind of information that could be of use. And if a publication says no, I mean, I don't know if I will have the time, I don't think so, to just talk a little bit what is happening behind the scenes, you know, in every media. But it's not necessarily that is not a good idea you are trying to pass, is that there are many other things happening in the news desk that it might, I don't know, it might be just they don't have the time, they don't have the person, they don't have the resources, whatever. But just try again, and it can be a very local media or a very global media, so you just have to try anyway. I suppose, I mean, one of the problems that we have nowadays is that we all are fighting not only against media to bring, you know, to grab the attention from readers, but also to have some attention with, you know, there is a lot of noise from social media, and the colleague from Nepal was mentioning some social media. I mean, for us, this is kind of one of the nightmares of the century, you know. There's a lot of noise, so you know you are trying to catch and you know the attention from readers, and it's very difficult. So anyway, I suppose you just have to try, and that's it. And there are many media actually that could be friendly for the stories that you want to pass. I just will share with you how it happened. One specific thing that happened. Why did I choose to go ahead with one story that was pitched to me? It was you know, a trade unionist from the Netherlands. And he was talking to me about, you know, this legislation that they have in the Netherlands. Young people, younger than 23 or 22, that they actually get less money than the minimum wage, you know, compared to people to a little bit older, like 24, 25, etc. So basically, this is legal. So a company can engage a young worker and pay this person much less than an older worker, and for the same job. I mean, for us, what was important, I mean, it's not this fact, because actually this legislation have been in place for a long time. For us, it was important because last year, at the end of the year, I mean, we could see, you know, skyrocketing prices in, you know, all the energy. Of course, the Netherlands is a super expensive country. So, I mean, if you have, and of course, in the Netherlands, it doesn't happen as in Southern Europe, for instance, that people stay with their families for longer. In the Netherlands, they really emancipate much sooner. So in this context of, you know, growing prices, people emancipating very soon, I mean, everything very expensive. So you have this situation of, you know, they don't get the same amount of money for the same work. So for us, it was the time to revisit, should this continue like this? Why still is a thing? So then we came back and we just talked, and we just did an article, you know, with a journalist, a very good journalist that we have. So for us, it was interesting, the pitch that we received, but of course we were checking the legislation, we were talking with many organizations, with the government, etc. So this is the thing. I mean, there's some stories that perhaps they are not interested in a moment because of a reason, but there is a moment where, you know, the context changes, and then of course it's interesting for us. So the idea I got, you know, from the president, Lorraine Sibanda, she was talking about the beauty, you know, that sometimes they get evicted because, of course, you know, I mean, the authorities, they think it doesn't look beautiful, no, what they do. I mean, the street vendors, I mean, so I was thinking perhaps a photo report looking for the beauty of actually these places. No, I mean, you know, it actually can be something, I suppose. I mean, there must be something done already, but I'm going to check. Actually, she gave me an idea, and I really hope from the other panelists to get some other ideas, and then I will check in the, you know, during the editorial meeting, and we will see what we can do, because of course, I mean, for me, this is a very good moment to grab, you know, to collect ideas, contacts. I see very, very interesting people here. So I think actually this is a good thing for you to do, Irene and Margarida. You just put together a lot of journalists. You don't allow them to check their devices while they have to to hear all these people. And then we will have stories in the coming months, that is for sure. So I will stop here because I already talked for 12 minutes and something else. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. And thank you also for talking about your idea, which is very timely because, as many of you know, the month of October is known as Urban October, where we do campaigns and we celebrate the right to the city for street vendors. So I think that if a story like this comes out at a time, this is the perfect time. We also have a campaign with some of our comrades, including comrades from WIGO, about the care economy, the informal economy, and the right to the city. So if you follow our social media, again, you will find some material from there. And of course, we are happy to discuss about taking any story further. And you're right, that was one of the ideas of the webinar, getting people together and promoting dialogue between workers, organizations, and journalists and outlets. So I think that the suggestions that Marta gave were very useful for all of us, especially people who work in organizations, workers' organizations on the ground, including StreetNet affiliates. And another thing that I want to remind you is that if any person that works for any affiliates of ours has an idea for a pitch and needs any support, that's also what the media team of StreetNet is for. So Margarida and I are here to help you with this as well. Let me introduce you to the next speaker, who is Zenaida Machado. She's the senior researcher at the Africa division of Human Rights Watch. And Zenaida will talk about her research in Angola and Mozambique, with a particular focus on the violence against workers and human rights violation. So I think I see Zenaida somewhere. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hi, Zenaida.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well. The floor is yours if you want to present a little bit your research and your work and the case study you want to share with us today.
Okay, can you see me?
Yes.
Yes, we can see you.
And hear you properly.
Thank you for inviting HRW to talk on such an important issue, that is the work of the rights of informal workers. We were asked to share our experience in working with civil society, journalists, and other stakeholders, and on monitoring and reporting on labor rights violations and promote decent work, and how informal economy workers organizations could be more involved with this monitoring work. We at HRW have, my colleague Niga will speak after me about the details on what especially the women's rights division is doing to protect more the rights of informal traders and informal workers. But for myself, in my case, I'm a researcher. My job is exactly to document the abuses against those informal workers and make sure that the international community, the media, and our other partners and stakeholders are aware of those abuses. We have extensively documented on abuses in both Angola and Mozambique, and with particularly focus on women, because in the case of those two countries, women make the larger part of informal workers, especially street vendors. And who are those people? They're, like I said, they're mostly women who live in extreme poverty with no access to social grants, no protection or alternative work. They are mostly people who lack adequate housing, access to land, access to basic service. They're also mostly people who lack identity cards, which also prevents them from doing anything else, including looking for an alternative means of earning a living. And what type of abuse have we documented over the past years? Mostly beatings, degrading and humiliating treatment, seizure of goods and extortion, arbitrary detentions. And when the victims are women, we have also in a few, in some circumstances, documented sexual harassment, mostly from police officers and local authorities against those women who are on the streets trying to earn a living. And what are the reasons that the governments often bring as for restricting the rights of the street vendors, especially the right to earn a living and the right to protest, peacefully protest. The first reason, and which is the one that we are seeing more and more happening as our African cities tend to develop and grow, is the need to relocate people to give space to new infrastructure, either it's roads or new houses or new buildings. The second one is the need to forcibly make street vendors to move to new markets. And that unfortunately also comes with an element of political propaganda. What happens is that, especially in local authorities, when it's time of electoral campaign, they promise new markets to street informal traders and to earn their vote. And once those markets are built, they feel the need to populate those markets and justify their pledges. And when that happens, most of the times they are now also the authority. They are no longer political candidates, and they have the power to use the force to bring those informal traders inside the markets. The other reason that this has happened mostly in Angola, for example, is the issue of security. The Angolan government often claims that the street vendors occupy the streets, create some sort of chaos, populate roads, and that in itself causes some sort of security threat to bypassers or to transport and drivers across the main cities. And what is our job? How do we work as HRW? What we do is, first we show our ability to hear the stories of the informal traders. Most of them don't know their rights. They don't know who to contact if they feel aggrieved. They don't belong to any associations or any groups that can protect their rights. So what we do is, in coordination with partners on the ground, other civil society groups, is to make sure that they can contact us whenever they need, whenever they want, and can share with us their stories. The essence of the work of Human Rights Watch is to hear the victims and document their stories, and then make sure that those stories are heard somewhere else by those who can provide effective change on the life of the victims. The other way that we work is to engage, like I explained, with local groups and ensure that when we are not present in the country, our partners are able to be in touch with those groups of street vendors and keep documenting their stories and share with us the most problematic issues that we can then take up. The other one is to permanent monitoring of government operations, especially the so-called street cleanup operations. Quite often we hear governments complaining that there's a need to clean the streets, there's a need to organize the trade, the informal trade. And when we hear those kind of announcements, it raises an alert. We want to know how they're going to do it. And we want to make sure that, for example, if force is deployed to remove people from the streets, they are complying with the United Nations basic principles on the use of force and firearms. And if the law enforcement are respecting the human rights, basic human rights of those street vendors. The other way we work is also to investigate and expose the use of force against street vendors. And we make sure that we repeat constantly to governments in particularly that any process of reorganizing cities and towns should be based on the local legislation and the international human rights laws. And we expose when they don't do it. We make it a point to embarrass the authorities if they don't do that. And one of the ways of doing that is to engage with the press through social media. I think right now, every one of the HRW researchers has got a social media account, and we use it quite often to quickly alert media about media and the public in general about any abuses that have come to our attention. The other one is by writing press releases in which we try to give to the media as much detail as we can about what exactly is going on the ground. And if needed be, then we also do the detailed long reports in which we give the background to those issues, why certain countries and authorities would choose, for example, to use force to remove street vendors from the streets, or why they are not able, for example, to provide alternative means for them to earn a living. And we also use the reports to give some recommendations on our authorities, because authorities do have the right to improve the quality of living in their town, but that shouldn't be at the expense of those who want to do informal trade or want to earn a living. So we do recommend governments better ways of doing this so-called cleanup of the streets without infringing the human rights of the citizens. We also make sure that we engage with international partners, especially donors. You will remember that in many cases, especially in Africa, those city refurbishments, those rebuilding of cities are at the expense of donors. It's with donors' money. So it's important to make sure that those that are giving the money are aware of what exactly is going on the ground. I'm sure those who are giving the millions of dollars to improve transport connections, to improve housing in some of our cities, would not want to know that that was at the expense, for example, of police being deployed to the streets and killing a murder or simply trying to sell, for example, water on the streets, which we have documented in the past. We also make sure that we push the international community and other partners and stakeholders to put pressure on governments to ensure that any efforts to ban or organize street trade are conducted by officers who are very aware of human rights issues. And that those that are found violating the local laws, the international laws, are investigated and held accountable. We also ask our international partners and donors to make sure that they push governments to ensure that street vendors and others who are victims of police brutality are given the effective remedies and receive adequate redress and medical assistance when that is needed. I thank you very much for this opportunity to share what we as HRW do to ensure that informal workers and traders have their rights respected and can operate in better conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zenaida. I attract your attention to the fact that my colleague Margarida has been sharing some links in the chat. So if you want to read some of the research that Human Rights Watch has done on these issues, you can click on those links and you can save them. Thank you very much for talking about these realities. I think that for many of you who are here, who are informal economy workers and street vendors in particular, this is a very familiar topic to talk about: police brutality and right to the city and right to occupy public space without violence and harassment. And on that topic, I would like to give the word to another speaker from Human Rights Watch, Negar Motashami. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Please correct me if this is not right. Who is a research assistant and will present her work in particular on C190, the Convention of ILO on the elimination of violence and harassment in the world of work. Please, Negar, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a great transition. And thank you, Zenaida. That was an excellent, excellent summary of what we do at Human Rights Watch. I just want to flag that I was very impressed by Lorraine Sibanda's quotes. I have written them down. Any issue with street workers and street vendors needs a human rights approach. And I think I want that to stay with us as I present. So I'll do a very brief summary, not like Zenaida. Zenaida has given just everything that we talked about. I'm just going to talk about very briefly about the work that the Women's Rights Division is doing. We have a team working on advocating for ratification and reforms around C190, the Convention on Violence and Harassment at Work. And over a 6-month period from January to June 2023, Human Rights Watch conducted desk-based research in 84 meetings with local, regional, global unions, affiliates, NGOs, activists, etc., etc. We met with a lot of experts, including StreetNet International, and I'm sure some of you in this call. And we've identified both country-specific and sectoral opportunities, gaps, and challenges to advocate for ratification of C190 and reforms at national levels. Let me know if I talk too fast. I do have that problem, so just tell me to slow down and I can slow down. So we're looking to mainstream C190 in our own work, but also to ensure that we are collaborating with as many partners as possible to make sure that their work is amplified. You know, there's so many trade unionists and workers organizations on this call alone that has been doing work for years and years. And as Human Rights Watch, we really want to amplify already the work that is being done and how we can kind of come together. And so again, shout out to StreetNet for bringing us together in this space to do that.
We want to strengthen our collective and coordination efforts. So I'm just going to do a little elevator pitch. And if there's anybody within this call that is interested or thinks that there is possible opportunities for further collaboration, please feel free to reach out at my email. I'll drop it in the chat. But essentially from our mapping findings, we have decided for the next few months, we're going to be focusing on 3 specific countries. That is Pakistan, Uganda, and Indonesia. We will be doing further work along the line in Bangladesh and in India and in Mexico. But I think for street vendors, something that is really important is our work in Pakistan, or our upcoming work in Pakistan. There's a huge I guess, cry for further ratification or further advocacy for street vendors in Pakistan, especially. There is a lot of urban eviction that is happening, and that is going to be one of the big reports that one of our colleagues is going to be hopefully working on in the next couple of months. And we'll reach out to everybody to see if there's any on the ground stories that we can amplify in our research as well. And in Uganda, now that C-190 has been ratified, there's an employment act in the parliament that is meant to be passed. We're going to be trying to advocate to ensure that provisions that are important to the cause are included. And then hopefully that could pass within the next few years as well. We'll be working with hopefully some organizations in Uganda around that as well. In terms of Indonesia, that's going to be my final. It's actually very specific work around hotels and hotel associations, so less to do with street vendors. But again, we welcome any opportunity if there's any issues that was pertinent and pressing and it's coming up and maybe it's not coming up on our radar, please don't hesitate to reach out again. So I think that's going to be my little advocacy. Thank you so much again to StreetNet. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, Negar. And if you want to get in touch with her, I think she will type her email in the chat. But of course, you can also reach out to us, and we'll be happy to share Negar's email with you in case you want to contact her. So thank you very much to our colleagues from Human Rights Watch. It's really important for us to know the work of human rights organizations and civil society partners in these domains. So I'm now happy to introduce the next speakers, who is another StreetNet leader, in particular StreetNet's Vice President, Alberto Santana, from Dominican Republic. He will illustrate the experience of a workers' organization on the ground with media tools and how they use media to mobilize their constituency. So please, Alberto, the floor is yours. Compañero Alberto.
Sí, buenos días. ¿Me escuchan bien?
Sí.
Good morning. Do you hear me well?
Yes.
I would like to thank you first. I'm very happy to be here in this meeting, in this webinar. It's a great pleasure of talking about human rights and everything. I want to say 2 things. The informal sector of the economy is a sector that has not been very well interpreted. When people say that the authorities are leading, they see us as people who have committed a mistake, made a mistake, or committed an error. Most of of these workers, they are not there because they want to. They have been excluded from the labor force. So, and this economic dynamics is that most of these workers who do not have the opportunity and the need to, keep their families and their basic needs, they have to get some work done. And the first thing they can do usually is, as I said, the informal economy What is informal, according to some authorities, is the lack of paying for taxes, basically. In this sense, I would like to say that we have had many experiences. First, they want to take us from informality to formality, just just by the paying of taxes. But we resisted that. When we go out to work and sell something, when we buy the products, we pay the tax already. When we buy gas, petrol, for our motorcycles, our trucks, when we buy those products, we're paying taxes. They want to change the way of us paying taxes. I see this as a process of control of the norm, but this is what we want to take to the community and show them. In our organization, we talk about what we want, how we would like it to happen, and there's a specific thing here. Every time we've been asked to talk to those communication vehicles, we were claiming for a right, question, the harassment to certain colleagues. Every time we spoke about this, they would bring the information in a different way. So we had to find different ways to communicate what we wanted to. And there was a time that in TV program that we tried to say a couple of things that were of our interest, and they did not want me to say what I wanted to say. And I decided that nobody would speak for me anymore. We had our own TV channel, TV program, so we can talk about it. Fuente is the name of the program that we have. And well, it's a bit complex because of the costs, but what is the most important for us is to have our own media, our own channels. Where are we going to focus? We're going to focus in two aspects. One is to say and claim the demands from our comrades, so everything that we are requesting, basically, and that something has to bring some experience to us, we have to use it, is to inform and train these people, these partners of ours who do not have the access, the necessary access. Sometimes we have the means, but we do not use them. And above teaching this whole thing about communication is about how we're going to do all of this. We need massive groups. Each syndicate has its own group, its one WhatsApp group chat, and we have one for the federation, and then we start to disseminate information right there. And this information is sometimes the information that is sent are not really, they have nothing really to do with what we're looking into. So we have to conduct, a different way of this. So we want to talk about the perspective of a good communication system. Get the information that we are all going on the same direction. So that we can look at the same page and look at the same thing together, that we want to reach something together. So we don't want to be looking to opposite directions. So in that sense, we need to strengthen the communication and help our partners here, our comrades, to have this access. And lastly, I want to say that we cannot, not inform well. The social protection topic, we need to inform people, we need to use our means to help people understand that. What is the social protection, how to get it done? You ask simple questions where the people don't have to take so much time analyzing a document. And the information is going to be spread. They should be information of easy digestion, So we need to repeat as many times as possible. It's important to repeat. Repetition is key in this type of work that we want to actually put forward. So this is a very important matter that I would like to bring forward in this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alberto, and thank you for underlining how the use of media is a strategic tool for organizations and for sharing with us your experience. It's now time to introduce you to another journalist, the next speaker, Kevin Lin. He's the managing editor of Asian Labor Review. Thanks for joining us, Kevin. I know you had some previous commitment, so thanks very much for taking the time. Kevin will talk a little bit about the work that he's doing with Asian Labor Review. And the question that I would like to ask him is how the alternative media outlets can support workers' rights and grassroots organizations. So Kevin, if you can hear us, the floor is yours.
How much time do I have?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, great. Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me and for organizing this great event. So maybe let me say a couple of things about the publication itself, and then a bit more about how we are doing the stories on labor. First of all, so Asian Labor Review, despite the name, it's actually not an academic publication. What we would like to call itself a movement journal, so a movement publication. So it is both about what's happening in the labor movements in Asia, but also it's for the labor movements in Asia. So we want it to be both a space for information analysis, but also a space for a really sharp discussion, debate. And as you mentioned, we are sort of alternative media. I don't think we have called ourselves that, but we definitely see ourselves as labor media in the sense that we specifically report on labor issues, and we want people to get more interested in labor issues. And in fact, I've been sort of going around Asia and talking to sort of local, national level, maybe local, just sort of city level media, labor media. Sometimes they are a online publication, sometimes they are a radio. Actually, there are some really interesting radio, community radio programs, and some are podcasts. And I think there's so much, actually, a lot of interesting independent labor media out there. And I think it's great that we can sometimes bring them together and share stories, because most of the local labor media are only publishing in their own language. So, we sometimes try to maybe republish and translate stories from different media outlets. But what I really want to talk about is how do we do labor stories, right? And I wrote down a few things. I don't know if any of that resonate with people. The first thing is telling a good story. And we are really, really not good at telling a good story, which is a shame, because I think so many of us, when we go to the field, when we talk to workers, talk to organizers, talk to activists, talk to unions, there's so much great stories. It's often the best part of my job, if you will, is going around, going to the field, talking to workers and activists and organizers. They always have great stories, but somehow our writings don't always convey the excitement, the inspirations that we see in the stories that we are told by workers and organizers. So how do we tell a good story? I think there are a few things to think about. One is not focus on just how bad things are for workers, right? So I think we have a tendency, unfortunately, myself included, to try to sometimes overemphasize how bad things are for workers, right? And there's a lot of those kind of stories that we can easily do, because the situation is pretty bad for workers. Street vendors, especially, as part of the informal workers, the conditions are always terrible. If we want to do a story of how bad things are, there's a lot of material. But I think what underlies our sort of philosophy, or editorial thinking, is we want to focus on what is empowering workers. So instead of focus mostly on how bad things are, which we know it is bad, we try to find stories that actually tell that showcase how workers are learning how to resist, learning how to organize, learning how to build power. So our really guiding sort of principle, if you will, is about this idea of power and how do you build power? Where does workers' power come from? So when we start to think more in terms of power building, like our stories get more interesting. Because, for example, we'll do interviews with workers, so reconcile grassroots worker organizers, and we ask them, so how do you do organizing? What are some of the things you tried? What are some of the failures you had? What some of the successes you had? And of course, there's always failures. There's always terrible things that they experienced. But of course, what is making people feel empowered is those stories where workers overcome those difficulties. So we try to more and more focus on those stories rather than just how bad things are. Although we do publish those too, but we try to keep it to a small proportion. The second aspect is grappling with difficult questions, hard questions. So when I say hard questions, I don't only mean the kind of challenges, to organizing, to advocacy work. Again, we know that. We know some of the challenges. So when I talk about grappling with hard questions, it's also hard questions in terms of our own problems, right? What are some of the things that we haven't done well? What are some of the contradictions we see in our work, right? Like just from the simple fact of, a lot of street vendors don't identify themselves as workers. Why is that, right? Maybe it's not just, well, part of it is just, sure, they maybe have sort of kind of false consciousness, right? They misidentify themselves. But there are also material reasons, actual reasons why they do not see themselves as workers. Or just take another example. I talk to a lot of unions, and the unions say, oh, we really have trouble relating to young workers. They just don't find unions that useful. Of course, we can point, because those workers are very, kind of individualistic. They're being sort of neoliberal, kind of neoliberalized. They become very itemized. So we began to think of all those reasons why the problems are with those young people. But maybe it's some problem with our own unions, right? Maybe it's because we haven't done a good enough job of organizing workers, of making the unions more democratic and accountable, right? Very often young workers would say, we do not identify with big unions because the unions are not democratic. They're very top-down. They're very hierarchical. So there are sometimes some reasons that why we fail at organizing workers or attracting workers to unions, right? So I think part of what we try to do is to grapple with difficult questions, hard questions that are to do with ourselves as well, right? Another thing is, I think very often, this is specific to street vendors as well. This idea of what workers are, I think a lot of us hold on to this idea that really only factory workers are workers, right? If you're workers working the informal sectors, if you don't work in a big workplace, you're not workers. And sometimes, again, workers themselves see themselves not as workers either. So how do you engage with workers on those conversations? So our way of doing that is kind of listening to what their experience, what are the contradictions that they see in their work and in their life, right? Why do they think they're not workers? And then you may start to shift the conversation. Okay, what are some of the ways that you, for example, can respond to some of the problems that you have, even if you don't identify yourself as workers? How do you see the ways, the solutions to the grievances, to the problems you have at work? And that's when people start to think, oh, maybe we're not the entrepreneur we think we are, or we're not the small businessman we are. Actually, our issues are labor issues. And then we move the conversation further. Okay, if you are starting to identify yourself as workers, as part of the working class, how do you build power? What are the ways in which you can gain power? Because individually you have very little power. So we started this conversation about organizing. So actually, a lot of our work as a publication, and I feel a little bit forced to call myself a journalist. I don't have a journalistic background. I have an activist and the academic background. But when we talk to workers, we think more ourselves not as just a kind of media publication, but as an organizing project. A lot of, again, what we do is to tell the stories, but also to connect people and to move the conversation forward toward what power building looks like. So that's kind of a lot of what we think it's interesting and useful in our line of work. Maybe finally, I want to finish on this point. Again, I don't know if it resonates with other people. Again, this idea that young workers are not interested in union or labor rights issues, or at least they don't. Maybe they're just not joining the unions, right? Despite having a lot of problems at work. Surprisingly, most of our readers, online readers, are people under the age of 30. So some are students, some are young workers, some are activists. I actually find it surprising because we started off not as a publication for young people. We actually started off as a publication for people like you, people who are already very involved, very experienced in work. Actually, those are not the people who read our publication, because they already know so much. They have their own network. They have the people that they can call up and learn what's happening. Actually, it's younger people who are reading our publication, and I think that gave me a lot of confidence and the hope, because I do think young people are interested in learning more about labor, but they may not be wanting to learn about the policy side. I know some of the speakers on this panel talk more on the policy side. I think that's really important. But I think there's also a larger audience out there of young workers, young people who, if you write in sort of like policy way or in very academic way, they see they're not the audience, right? But if you're writing just as a human rights, a human story, I think there are actually a lot of people who are interested in what's happening with street vendors, with informal workers everywhere. So I actually do feel very hopeful about, you know, both organizing street vendors, organizing informal workers, organizing young workers, but also the role of independent or alternative media. Again, like I think a lot of us, certainly we are very small media publication. We don't have a lot of resources, but sometimes it doesn't take a lot of resources to do this. Again, I think what's important is to tell a good story, and that good story has to be empowering workers, empowering young people, so that they feel working away after reading these stories. They feel like, okay, actually, the world is not hopeless. We can do something, but together. So that's my little bit of introduction to what we do. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for your take on this topic about the intersection between media work and organization of workers in particular, especially for talking about a way of doing storytelling that is not only based on telling the problems and telling the things that are going wrong, but on building workers' power and resources, which is, in the end, is also what StreetNet is about, solidarity and workers' power. We now have come to our last but not least speaker who has joined us, Mamadou Kabasware. He is the head of communications and publications at the ILO, the International Labour Organization, Bureau for Workers' Activities, ACTRAV. Mamadou, we would love to hear from you more about the work that your office does about media resources, and the media resources that the ILO develops to inform and mobilize workers and other stakeholders, and especially to promote the decent work agenda. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Irene, and good morning or good afternoon or bonjour à tout le monde. I want to thank you really for this invitation to join you today. It's really a privilege to share our perspective on these questions and very important challenge linked to the promotion of decent work for street vendors. Regarding what we are doing from the ILO here, I think you are all familiar with our main channels that we are using here in terms of advocating for social justice, in terms of advocating for also decent work. So I think my point today will be more to be, let's say, provocative a little bit. As you know, the question of informal economy is really at the heart of ILO work. Since the adoption of the ILO recommendation 204 on the transitions from informal to formal economy, many efforts have been done by workers' organizations to promote decent work for workers in the informal economy. And I want to take this opportunity really to acknowledge the important role played by StreetNet to advocate for more decent work to those who are left behind, in particular street vendor. Also, I just want to also take this opportunity to inform you that as part of our work, this question of informal economy is really, really important for us here. This is why the governing body, the ILO governing body, decided in March 2023 to include in the sessions of the International Labour Conference in 2025 the item on innovative approaches to tackle informality and promote transitions toward formality, to promote decent work for a general discussions. I think really, colleagues, we still have time to better prepare this rendezvous in order to advance the question of implementation of the ILO recommendation 204. So colleagues, I think honestly, we all agree about the critical role that the media have to play to promote decent work in the informal economy. And from the ILO, just to let you know that we already launched some weeks ago a global campaign on the reduction of inequalities, and a core component of this global campaign is definitely the question of transitions from informal to formal economy. You will find more information about this global campaign on the ILO's website, and you are more invited as well to contribute to this campaign. But as I said at the beginning, I want to be a little bit provocative by sharing ideas for further reflections. I think in addition to the needs of for creating good network and also preparation of attractive content to the media, I think we need to ask ourselves one question. What the journalists and street vendors have in common, for example. And here, I think if we have these reflections, we can acknowledge that firstly, they are all part of the vulnerable groups with poor working conditions, with precarity, with a lack of social security. So coming from the journalist background as well, I know what I'm telling you, because with some exceptions, many journalists are not in the decent working conditions. I think it's also important to realize that the two groups, let's say informal workers and many media workers, and in particular journalists, are also victims of violations of their rights. This is also a fact. So I think there is a preconditions to ensure this full support from the media and journalists regarding the promotion of this decent work for informal workers. These preconditions is simple. In reality, I think journalists like freelancers and workers in the informal economy have really many similarities and common interests. This is why I think it's very important to look at the best way probably to create or to build more partnership, more solidarity between the two groups. The idea will be to have, let's say, a win-win partnership between the two groups. How can we do that from workers' side, from workers' organizations? I think definitely there is a great experience in terms of organizing, in terms of capacity building, in terms of protection of workers' rights. I think from the ILO, we really want to promote the critical role of workers' organizations in terms of mobilizing, in terms of organizing in the line of the ILO Convention 87 and 98 on collective bargaining. And then I think in return, what media can do, we all agree on the fact they are key in terms of educating, firstly, workers in the informal economy, but also influencing the public opinions and policy makers. They can also support through different advocacy efforts to combat decent work deficit in the informal economy, but also denouncing, if possible, the working conditions, as many speakers pointed out here about the poor working conditions of street vendors who are exposed to the extreme of climate change, for example, to income insecurity, to the occupational safety and health lack of that, and also the question of difficult relations sometimes with the public authority. So in the context of this crisis and multiple challenges, I think the question will be more on how to work together between the journalists, the media workers, and informal workers in order to ensure that no one is left behind. I will not go in depth because I think time is not on our side. But from the ILO, we really stand ready to continue our support to workers' organizations in order to advance this question of decent work, in particular for informal workers. I will stop here and happy to respond to any questions from your side.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mamadou, for this very precise and complete overview, and also for promoting and putting forward this idea of solidarity between journalists, media workers, and informal economy workers. So I would like to thank you once again, all the speakers, everyone who participated. And I will now pass the mic back to Margarida because we have time for a few questions, I think. And she will moderate the Q&A session. So really, thank you very much once again, also for being so precise with the time. It's great. It has been great to be with you today.
Thanks, Irene, and thank you everyone for this excellent panel. I hope it has generated many ideas and maybe even future opportunities for collaboration. We have time for about 2-3 questions, I think. So I ask members of the audience who want to speak to raise their hands and be clear and concise. And if possible, also let us know who your question is aimed at, if it's aimed at a particular speaker. We'll have about 15 minutes for questions, so we don't go too much over our allotted time, and also to respect our interpreters who have been working nonstop to make this conversation possible. So if you have any question, please raise your hands. If you have any difficulties raising your hand, you can also just open your mic, but hopefully, Guadalupe? Trying to see if there's anybody with any questions they would like to add. From Guadalupe, just saying that she quite enjoyed the webinar, and thank you very much for organizing this.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello, hello, Bamidala, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Margarida. I don't have much questions, but I want to appreciate.
Gracias.
Hello?
Excelente.
Yes, Bamidala, please go ahead.
Okay. I just want to appreciate all the panelists for their inputs. And this is an eye-opener. And I believe we are going to make use of all the points given here, especially the street vendors' rights, the collaboration with journalists, media workers, and street vendors for decent work, and how to formalize from informal to formal. So I believe with all the links that has been dropped, we'll have a lot more to collect from there, and at the same time, learn from it and make use of it. And I promise in Free One Nigeria, we are going to implement most of the ideologies that have been shared here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bamidala. So as Irene wrote in the chat, Bamidala Frances Onopke, she's the recent newly elected national president of the Federation of Informal Economy Workers Organizations of Nigeria. I see that we have a question from Annie Diouf. Annie Diouf, please go ahead. Annie Diouf is from Senegal, from CNTS.
Voilà, bonsoir tout le monde.
Good evening, everybody, or good day, or depending on where you are. I would like to start by thanking the organization of StreetNet, and I would like thank you for initiating this activity regarding the media and the decent work. I would like to panelists who participated or who emanated the ideas. So I would like to ask them to to synthesize the ideas how to go forward. I would like not to contradict with the ideas that have been announced. I would like to tell that the StreetNet is an organization which occupies a very high level, and I would like to suggest it would be better to put on place not only the activities to promote the conditions of street vendors, but we would like to think how to understand the better role to be played by the media, because in our countries, especially in Africa, we know that the work done by street vendors, informal workers, if we are members of trade union, we do not always have time to accede to media and explain our problems. This is a problem of all countries in development. You know, these problems have been highlighted at the level of International Labour Organization. We should think how to elaborate the real channels of communication, because you know all medias are illustrating different ways of communication, but informal workers need to speak openly and directly without intermediaries, because you know we have only the opportunities to intervene on the occasion of meetings, reunions, etc. But we don't have means or facilities how to express openly and directly, because without intermediates involvement we cannot do that. Maybe we have to think how to go forward without these intermediates. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade Ani. Before asking one of our speakers to help answer this question, which Ani raised and which I think is in the head of many of the participants of this webinar who are from our affiliates, which is but after all, how can we actually have more access to the media? I'm just going to ask if we have any further questions before asking one of our speakers to answer Ani's question.
There are a few contributions in the chat.
Yes, exactly. So we have one contribution from Anka from Co-op News saying that they are always happy to cover stories about street vendors who formalize using the co-op model. So if you want to get in touch with Anka with any stories about successful worker-led cooperatives of street vendors, you have her email in the chat. And we also have another contribution from Busani Bafana, who is a journalist, saying an insightful webinar. Thank you for thought-provoking discussions. And encouraging collaboration between street vendors and the media to move beyond the usual narrative and to tackle the lived experiences of street vendors. And also from Mariela Vasquez from Bogota, Colombia, she also mentions how she has appreciated being here in this webinar and how it is important for us to discuss all of these issues related to media and informality. And she's showing us our support as well from Bogota. So to answer Annie's question, if we don't have any other questions for now, I would actually encourage Marta from Equal Time, since she's also here the representative of media outlets that often publishes news related to Africa. So Annie, she's actually from Senegal. She's responsible for informal economy issues at CNTS, so the Trade Union Central in Senegal. So Marta, I don't know if you would have any advices for Annie.
Actually, I was thinking that actually the question was for you, StreetNet, to create the channels. I mean, I don't think, I don't know what resources Annie was actually mentioning, but to reach a media, you basically need to open a website, I mean the media, and to check who are actually the journalists doing a specific news, similar to the ones you want to actually share with. So basically for that, it's just to read a newspaper, or I don't know, or to watch a program, or to, I don't know, to just to follow who are the journalists, or who are the editors, or what are the media actually doing this kind of
Oops, sorry, Marta, I think you were muted. Maybe it was some technical problem. You were muted for only like 5 seconds, so we were hearing you, don't worry.
Okay, so all right. No, so do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, so sorry. So basically, I mean, just follow the people, I mean, check the newspapers, check who is doing this kind of information, and then just provide. So actually, Kevin Lin, who I really would like to contact later, he was actually saying very, very interesting things of, you know, how, because of course Santana was actually very you know, he was complaining of how, you know, you have this information goes to a media, and then the media publish something completely different. So these are the things that I was mentioning, but I couldn't very well, I mean, I couldn't explain because I didn't have the time. We have a behind the scenes, so how a media works, what are our interests, which is the editorial line, etc. So there are many reasons. You have some information and the media produces something very different. So Santana was actually very pissed off, and I can understand. But actually, I mean, one thing is that the information is not exactly what you wanted, and when the information is wrong, then is when you can be very angry and very, I mean, for many, many, many reasons. But of course, the media, as Kevin was saying, for instance, his media, I mean, they are looking these strong, powerful stories, but it's not exactly what the journal, what the vendor want to convey or want to pass, but he's actually going to a bigger, you know, to a bigger story. So of course, media, we want to give, you know, new stories, new angles, new everything. So perhaps what we take are small ingredients of what was said, and then we just produce another, I mean, we produce the story that we think our journalists need, perhaps just with ingredients. So I will say that don't be angry at media if they don't produce exactly what you want with all the quotes, etc., because media are media. We have our needs, we know what our readers need or would like to read. So, but you are providing ingredients that are very important for us. So the way we cook them is another thing, but just follow the media, check who the journalists that are writing this kind of stories, and then you are in the good path. And perhaps they are not answering you in a moment, but in a, I don't know, a few months later, whatever, they can come back. And you have a very good, strong organization, StreetNet. I mean, you are great with all the information providing. I received some information for Guatemala. I'm developing a story in Guatemala. So perhaps I'm using some ingredients, again, that I received from StreetNet. So you are providing some ingredients, then the media cooks something else, but go to the media that in the end may be of interest. And again, I don't know if I'm working, but I mean, if I'm helping here, but it's what I can think of.
Thanks, Marta. And I saw that Kevin has also raised his hand. So Kevin, please go ahead if you'd like to add something.
Sure, I'll just follow up on what Marta said. I appreciate, Marta, you mentioned quite a few things I think are quite important to emphasize. One is, you know, I think for StreetNet, for its affiliates, for any sort of unions or workers organization, you know, being proactive is important in terms of, you know, reaching out to journalists, just sometimes just to get in touch so that they're aware of your existence. There are just so many times that journalists from mainstream media have contacted me because they want to do a story about, let's say, tech workers in Indonesia, and they were like, who should we contact? But I'm like, you guys are actually based in Jakarta, so why do you ask me? Who I was at the time based in Hong Kong. Like, why do you ask me? But it does show something that I think it's quite prevalent as a problem, because as unions, as labor organizations, we're so busy organizing workers, defending workers' rights. Like we just don't have time, right? I think that's a common issue that we have. We just don't have time to develop a story. And sometimes we don't feel maybe the journalists will come to us, but sometimes the journalists they don't really know your work and know the amazing work you're doing. So being proactive, I think, is important. But I think one more point. I think again, coming back to this question of what stories do we want to tell, I think it's worth thinking more about this question. I think very often, because when we're doing organizing work, we see all the problems, all the violation of labor rights, and overthinking is there's a violation of labor rights, therefore it's newsworthy. It's not. Unfortunately, like we want it to be newsworthy, but a journalist will not just look at a case of labor rights violation as a newsworthy story. But I think even for me, I don't just cover violation of labor rights because it's everywhere, right? You have to. I had to go a bit further than that, right? Again, going back to this question of what is the story what is the story we want to tell to other workers, to the government, to international organizations, etc., etc. What is the message you want to carry? It's not just that our rights are being violated. That's true. That's by default true. But is there something more? Is this also a story about how workers are getting together to push back? Or is it a story about workers trying to figure out what is the best way to create an organization, a new union, or a more democratic union? Like those kind of story, I think is worth thinking about. Like what I do very often, I know workers and organizers are too busy, so I would go to them and do interviews, right? But I think on the part of unions and the other part of union organizers, I think it's also useful to think about a little bit more, maybe working with StreetNet, your media team, to think about what is the story we want to craft, right? Like everyone has an amazing story, I'm sure. So it's not about inventing anything, but it's more about like drawing out the things that are inspirational, that are empowering, and craft them into narratives that can be published either in the more mainstream media or in alternative labor media. So that's kind of the point I want to add.
Thank you so much, Kevin. That was very insightful comments, and I'm sure that they're also helpful for our affiliates who are participating in this webinar today. I also saw in the chat another comment by one of our members, Alejandra Marina Rincon, from New York. I imagine, from Street Vendor Project in New York, one of our affiliates who is also a very strong city-based organization, asking us to continue this type of webinars. And I just want to say on behalf of the media team at StreetNet that, whatever our affiliates want us to invest in, that's what we're going to do. And we're very happy that you're finding this webinar to be very useful for your work. I also saw one question from Mariela Vasquez about Convention 190. I will share in the chat the link to a webinar that we actually did about 2 years ago, only about Convention 190 on elimination of violence and harassment in the world of work and its importance for street vendors. That webinar has subtitles in about 4 or 5 languages, so it's a very useful resource as well. And since I am not seeing any more raised hands, I am actually going to close the Q&A session, and I'm going to call on our international coordinator, Oksana Abboud, for some final words. Oksana, are you there?
Yes, thank you so much. It was such an interesting discussion. I'm so happy. I learned personally also a lot. I have a lot of notes. But first of all, of course, thanks to our great speakers of workers leaders who are StreetNet leaders, our president, vice president, and council member, Sister Maya, for your great contribution and experience. It is so important to share positive but also negative experience, but also to our great speakers who are invited from different organizations, who are experts from Human Rights Watch, from Equal Times, from ALR, from ILO-ACTRA. We really appreciate your time because it is so important, and we can see how important this space is for us to analyze and reflect how media sees us as informal economy workers and how we want to be seen and what we are doing for it. So how it is important to find those our common issues, either it is promoting of the same rights or human rights or workers' rights or international instruments and agenda, or just to really see ourselves as vulnerable as, for example, journalists and the informal economy workers, as Comrade Mamdou noted. Thank you so much. We appreciate also your experience on how it is important to target media in our organizing, mobilizing work, advocacy, collective voice, but also making ourselves visible and our work, because we are so thankful to Human Rights Watch, for example, for your work you are doing, which is so important for us, documenting those cases of abuses. This is what we are also eager to have, because this is evidence-based stories, which are very valuable, very accurate information, which is also important to have in any article or story, and to build trust also. So I also would like to note about importance of how we can combine our efforts, especially as our expert from Asia noted, Kevin. Many stories are in local language, and this is also, we consider it is a challenge, but how we can combine efforts and to extend our voice, to be more visible and present, and really to influence mind shifts. So this is a big question. I believe we should continue such kind of discussions, interactions, either maybe based on regional arrangements, because we have regional focal points with our leaders, so where we can interact also and create such similar platforms of engagement. But also, not to take a lot of time, I would like to stop on this positive note to quote Comrade Kevin, that the world is not helpless. And that's why let's join our efforts, especially preparing towards ILO Conference 2025, where we can make really big contribution, intervention, and to present how we see formalization process from informal economy workers without harm, without damage, without abuse, just for prosperity of a better future. Thank you, our team, media team, kudos. They are great, they are promoting all our work, trying to connect with different journalists and audiences, but also thanks to all speakers, our participants, and of course to the interpreters. Thank you so much. Over to you, Margarida.
Thank you, Oksana. Thank you, everyone. So we can stop our webinar for today. Just to remind you that we are going to have the recording available on YouTube. So after, when we manage to upload it, we'll disseminate it with all of you. So thank you so much. And I'm now in gallery mode, so I can take actually a screenshot of everyone who is here. So if you want to open your camera and just smile for us, I will just take a quick snapshot of you. Okay, thank you so much, everyone.
Margarida, bonjour. Moi, ma caméra ne fonctionne plus, hein?
Bonjour. Thank you, everyone, and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Merci, merci. Au revoir à tous.
Gracias, mis compañeros. Mucho gusto.